What is up, YouTube? It's Dear coming to you with another video, and today I want to talk about how Africa was once a great land that had beautiful trees and beautiful grass area. Africa hasn't always been a dry desert place as it is now. So in my last video I talked about the civilization of Egypt, so I'm going to go back into that so we can get into this story. You notice how Egypt was once a great civilization, but there's nothing really left except the pyramids and a few other tombs. The Great Sphinx was once covered up to its neck in sand. The total height of the statue is 60 feet in total. So that means a lot of Egypt is still underground, or it hasn't been discovered yet, or they're hiding something from us. Egypt was once a great civilization until Alexander the Great and his armies came and conquered and destroyed the land. Do you find it weird that most of Africa is dried out and covered in large amounts of sand, but it was once the starting point of life? Do you think God would pick a starting point to be a desert, or would he pick somewhere that had nice, beautiful trees, nice land, grassland area with plenty of water that was fruitful, right? What if all the sand that covers Africa and it's dry because when they came and saw how powerful and connected black people were, or the Africans were, to the land and the trees, they burned and cut down everything? African spirituality is based off nature. They live one with the land, and they believe that God is in everything. So God is in the trees, God is in the grass. Like, we're connected to land, we're connected to nature. So why is Africa the most driest remote place now? Africa was once a great land that had tall trees, great big trees. Have you ever heard of the ancient trees and how the trees were much larger than they were today? And they cut down these trees because our ancestors knew God was in everything, and the great trees reached the sky. They felt like the trees were the true connection to God, because the trees reached the heavens, and the powers and the energy passed down through the trees. Have you ever heard of the tree of life? Here's the definition: a mystical tree that connects the physical and spiritual worlds. The tree of The tree of life is the foundation of supporting all life. Also, it's believed that the tree held universal wisdom and other powerful cosmic forces. So this will explain why they would cut down all the trees. If you look at Africa's sand or ground, it is different than any other desert. If you were to take samples of the ground or soil, it would show that they are proof of a great fire, and it would show that there's ashes in the sand. And if you were trying to hide something, what would you do? You would try to bury the evidence and create a false story or narrative to cover up the truth. Don't you find it weird that they had to dig out most of the findings in Africa or Egypt? And what if they only uncovered certain things because over time they started to show? And to avoid questions or confusion, they decided to discover what they hid and only chose to share certain things with us. Also, this gives them the chance to create their own meaning of what was discovered to keep up the lie or to keep hiding the truth. Before Alexander the Great or colonizers took over, this was long before Christopher Columbus, the world spoke a different language. Have you heard of the story in the Bible about the Tower of Babel? Genesis 11:1-2. Now the whole world had one language and common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain and settled there. Then the rest of the chapter explains how they went on to build a tower to reach the heavens so they can make a name for themselves. We will come back to this later. Notice how it says so they can make a name for themselves. But then the Lord came down and saw everyone speaking one language. Then he realized that Nothing they planned to do would become impossible for them. So the Lord said, "Come, let's go down and confuse their language so they can't understand each other." So then he scattered them from there all over the earth. They stopped building the city, and it was called Babel because the Lord confused the language of the whole world and scattered them all over the face of the earth. So let's think about this. If God created us right, wouldn't he have created the same language we were using? If he started off with Adam, and Adam and God had a great relationship and used the same language, it's only right that Adam passed that language down to his kids and to others, because that is how God talked to him, and that was the only language he knew. So why would he come back and destroy it? But in the verses it says the Lord came down. Do you notice how the names changed from Genesis 1 and 1? Genesis 1 and 1 states, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But in Genesis 11, he is now the Lord. Let's look at the definition of the Lord. And you know, back in the day, they had kings and lords. So think about that. The definition for Lord is someone or something having power, authority, or influences, or a master or ruler. Okay? Now let's look back at Alexander the Great and his conquest. Had broke down lands which separated peoples and enormously enlarged intellectual as well as geographic horizons. He deprived them of political entitlements which had absorbed their loyalties and had sheltered them from the outer world. Men were forced to turn upon themselves in a world that has grown overwhelmingly large. There were changes in literature, philosophical, and art. They pushed that the Greek language of government, businesses, fashion, and their way of life offered a fuller, more stimulating life. So, notice how I said there were changes in literature. You know, the King James Version of the Bible, or the Bible, was created in 1611. So think about that as we get deeper into this. Okay. Let's think about this. This kind of sounds like what the Roman Catholic Church taught. Convert to Christianity and you will have a great life, better than before. Or join a church and your life will change for the better. And if you didn't join, they would kill you. So Christopher Columbus and his people kind of sound like the Roman Catholic Church, right? How they conquered lands and they changed the way of life to fit their way of life. And if you didn't convert or join them, they would kill you. Okay? And then also, people or groups who refuse to participate in the new ways will have proven themselves as barbarians indeed and have been left stagnant in the backwater of civilizations. Let's look at how they treat blacks, Mexicans, and Native Americans now. Have y'all noticed or ever heard of the Mayans in South America? How they once were a great civilization as well? Well, those were Mexican people. And look how they treat Mexican people today. And when they first came to America, Christopher Columbus, and how they killed the Native Americans and kicked them off their own land. And look how they treat Native Americans today, by giving them small pieces of land out in the middle of nowhere where the land isn't as fruitful. So now, let's look back at the story of the Tower of Babel, but with a different pair of eyes. Since we just talked about Alexander the Great and how they conquered and changed the world with their own political standpoints, and if you didn't agree with them, they would basically get rid of you or call you a barbarian because you didn't agree with the new laws. So, the people in the story of Babel, the Tower of Babel, were black people. And the tower represents them ascending with their consciousness, ascending to having a great relationship or divine connection with God. Remember how I said our ancestors were connected to the land and how we just talked about the tree of life? The tree of life represents our ancestors and their connection to the real one, the real true God, and they held universal wisdom and power. So when the others realized this, let's look at the verse Genesis 11:6. The Lord said if the people are speaking the same language they began to do this, then nothing they plan to do would become impossible for them. So basically, if everybody was living in harmony, living off the land and divinely connected to the true source, the true God, then whatever they put in their mind, they can achieve it. Let's look at my favorite Bible verse. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when black people come together and realize they are powerful and unstoppable, we can do anything we put our mind to. But they wanted to put a stop to it before we realized our true power, because we didn't want to use that power for evil or to control. So the story of Babel, or the Tower of Babel, represents black people and them ascending in consciousness, them ascending to the heavens with their mind, them achieving things that regular people wouldn't think to achieve, them doing things that they only thought that the gods can do. So that's what the Tower of Babel and the Bible symbolizes. It symbolizes the black people rising up and becoming one with God. And the other people didn't like that. The colonizers didn't like that black people were ascending and becoming higher and achieving new things. So the Bible is basically like a history book, but it's full of symbolism, and it fits to their agenda. I'm not saying that the Bible is all wrong and you can't go by the Bible, because I go by the Bible and I still believe in God and I still believe in Jesus, and I'm still a follower of God and Jesus. It's just that there are things that aren't like we think they are, basically. They wanted to put a stop to it before we realized our true power, because we didn't want to use that power for evil or to control, because that is not in our nature. We believed in peace, and whatever we needed, God would supply it to us. It was only when the colonizers came, they created the violence, they created wars. The same people who call us violent, thugs, dumb, and who can't think like them are the same people who are violent, started the wars, and can't think like black people. So that's where they got that from. They say we can't think like them, but in reality, they can't think like us, because we are connected, we are tapped in with God. Okay? They feared us and our power, so they came up with these lies and religions to keep us from connecting with our true source. It is time that our ancestors are heard, and it's time that we bring them peace and remove the lies that were put on our names and put on them. Our ancestors suffered because of who they were and for being themselves, not because they were bad people. It's time that we wake up and regain our power, not only for ourselves, but for them as well. And the real truth is exposed, because we are not violent, we are not evil. We are the most loving, creative, talented, and intelligent people of the world, with so much power running through our veins and our skin. We are the true Israelites. We are the true Israelites. We are the original 12 tribes of Israel, the real children of God, the real kings and queens of this earth. And we are coming back for everything they stole from us.